Hi, I'm Wanda from Alanda Craft, and today I'm going to show you how to make these cute table toppers for Halloween. Now we've got two sizes, and I'm going to show you how to make the smaller size today, but the measurements for both sizes will be over on the website. So let's get on and show you how to do this. So what you need are 6 strips measuring 2 inches wide, cut across the width of the fabric. You'll also need some backing, and you'll need some batting. Now don't worry about the measurements, they'll all be on the website at alandacraft.com, and we'll have all the measurements and all the materials that you need. So what we need to do is lay our strips out, so you'll lay them out how you want them, and the first and the last, or these edge strips, these outer edge strips, are the pieces that are going to make your contrasting piece in the middle here. So this worked because the skull and crossbones was an all over small pattern. If I used one of the bigger patterns from this next set, it wouldn't show probably any of the bats, it might show a few stars, would show only little bits and pieces of the wording. So I prefer to have something that's going to just stand out, and tone on tone works well. So I'm going to use my black with my spider web and my orange, and that's going to give me this nice contrast for in the middle. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to sew all these strips together with a 1/4 inch seam. Now how I do that is I sew them together in strips of 2. So I'll take one, now we don't need to cut off salvages for this. Okay, lay one on top of the other, and I sew all the way down, as I say, with a 1/4 inch seam, and I'll do that with the next set and the next set. Now I sew them all in one way, but when I come to sewing these two onto the next two, once they're joined, is I sew them from the other direction. So I'll start at the other end and come back up. Now the reason that I'm doing that is to get rid of any waviness in the strips, and it'll stop it all bowing, it'll keep it nice and flat. Now once you've sewn all your bits together, you're going to end up with a piece of fabric that looks like this. Okay, so as you can see here, I've pressed all the seams so that they face the one way. Okay, so be very careful that you do that. That's going to help you later on when we come to putting our triangles together, because you'll be able to nest the seams, and we'll go into that in a later step. But just make sure that all your seams are ironed in the one direction. Okay, so now we're going to cut our triangles. Now I've got my 60-degree triangle ruler here, but you can also cut these using your ordinary quilting ruler along the 60-degree mark, and you can also use your mat if you don't have either of those rulers. But I'm not going to go into all that now, because we have an excellent tutorial on how to use each of those methods to cut your triangles. So what we need to do is we need to line the tip of our triangle ruler at the edge here, right at the edge of your top piece of fabric, and it should come down to 9.5 inches. Now it'll depend on your sewing, it may be a little bit out, so don't worry about that, as long as that tip there is on the top edge. So I've already cut that piece off, and I'll just cut the next piece now. Okay, and then all we do is we just turn our ruler around and do exactly the same thing. So line it up along the cut edge, make sure that our point is at the edge of this piece of the fabric now, and then we just cut down there. And then we're going to continue on until we have 6 triangles cut. So now lay your triangles down so that you have contrasting pieces here in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these 3 pieces together and these 3 pieces together. Now remember how we said to iron all of the seams in one direction before? That's so that when you come to this point, you'll see here that the seams are going to nest beautifully, so that you'll end up with nice neat joins on here. So I'm going to just pin down along these joins and sew these together, and then I'll sew them to that one. Alright, so I've sewn those 2 pieces together, and now I'm just going to show you how I attach the 3rd piece. What I do is I press the seam open, and then I lay my 3rd piece along the edge, and I start pinning again, matching up the seams. But when I get to the top here, what I do, as you can see, because I've pressed it open, I now have that little flap hanging out there, so don't cut any of these off as yet. And I just lay the top piece so that it matches up with that flap. Okay, so we've sewn those into 2 sets of 3, and now we're going to sew the 2 together. Now don't cut these little bits off yet, because we'll still use them to line up our pieces. So put one on top of the other, and again match that point up, match all your seams up again, making sure that you get them nice and even so that they're nice and neat when you sewn it through, and then we'll sew all the way along here with a 1/4 inch seam. So I've sewn the two pieces together, and what I've done is I've used this top piece as a template, and I've laid it out on top of my batting and my backing, and as you can see here, and I've allowed about 1.5 inches for both of those, bigger than the top, because I'm going to do a little bit of quilting, not much. You can quilt this any way you like, but all I'm going to do is I'm just going to ditch stitch across these long lines just to hold everything in place, and then I'm going to just stitch a 1/4 inch away from the seams all the way around, and I'll do that on both sides. Okay, so I've top stitched my topper onto my batting and my backing, and I've used a Hemingworth metallic silver thread, which I thought just gave it a bit of a lift. And now it's time to trim, so I'll just take my ruler and lay it across the edge of my fabric, and I'm just going to trim off the batting and the backing. And then I'll just turn it round, line up again with the edge, and do exactly the same thing, and I'm going to do that all the way around till I've cut off all the excess. Now it's time to put our binding on. Now to get our binding, I cut 2 strips of fabric, and then I've joined them, and then I've just ironed them in half. Okay, so you've just as you do a normal binding. All right, so just turn the piece over and pressed it. So we're going to leave a little bit of an overhang on the edge, and we'll just put a pin, start around the halfway mark. It's not critical. So I'll back stitch here, and then I'll lay my binding down to the end, and I'll stop at a 1/4 inch from the edge and back stitch. So I'll go and do that just to prepare this part, and then I'll show you the next step. So I've started attaching my binding, and you can see I've back stitched here, and I've back stitched at the other end as well, and I've only sewn to a 1/4 inch from the edge. And now I'm just going to take the binding and bend it back, and I take it back so that it lays along this seam line here, but it's also running along the same edge as this edge that we're going to sew next. So I just put my finger here at the point and then bring it back, okay, and just lay it down so you can see how it's going to sit. Now you're going to start sewing a 1/4 inch in, and just sew all the way down till you get to the end, and stop a 1/4 inch from the end and back stitch, and then we'll do exactly the same step, and then we'll keep going all the way around. Okay, so I finished attaching the binding to the front, and I'm just going to push that over and pin it on the other side, and I'm going to be hand stitching this, and I'll just create miters in the corners as I go. Now if you need assistance or you need some help with doing a binding, we've got a really good tutorial on how to do this, and I'll put a link in the description below. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, give us a thumbs up and like our channel, and don't forget to check out our website on alandacraft.com, and also our Facebook page.